on AM 790 Talk and Business.
Listeners in the micro and the American people in the macro, thank you for rekindling my belief in accountability and that the country still has a great spine in it.
Smart, entertaining, and relevant. The Dennis Miller Show, weekdays at noon on AM 790 Talk and Business. Your home for Yankees baseball. The Dennis Miller Show on AM 790 Talk and Business.
Listeners in the micro and the American people in the macro, thank you for rekindling my belief in accountability and that the country still has a great spine in it.
Smart, entertaining, and relevant. The Dennis Miller Show, weekdays at noon on AM 790 Talk and Business. Your home for Yankees baseball. To the Coalition on AM 790 Talk and Business. Join in the conversation at 437-5000 or 888-345-0790.
And we're back. I am the PO taxpayer. Co-hosting with me today is good friend of the Coalition, Dave Fisher. Dave, thanks a lot for coming in today.
My pleasure, and good morning, Rhode Island.
When we just left, we were talking about the, shall we say, the different movement and fortune of the respective parties. One would still assume, if you looked at the party structure superficially, that the Democratic Party was a party on the move. One would assume that, if you were just an outsider looking in, that the Republican Party seems to be, staggering in defeat. On one hand, some media wags were quick to point out that this was the biggest single-handed loss because of the sweep of the general offices. On the other hand, as we at the Coalition agree, regardless of our respective political positions, the General Assembly rules the day. Let's talk about Peter Palumbo, the scandal, and the fact that the Democratic Party is rudderless at the helm, if you will. There really is no leadership of the Democratic Party in place, is there? Nick, as we call him, Paulie Walnuts Mattiello, is ostensibly the leader at the head of the General Assembly. But the party structure, I think all of us learned this election that it's all about the party structure.
It really is. And I think that moving forward, there's going to be... I don't want to say a perception of where power lies within the Democratic Party, but one of either the Speaker of the House or the governor has to be. You say Joe McNamara, he's the head of the Rhode Island Democratic Party. We all know that. He doesn't really call the shots within the party, but I think that the
powerless.
The de facto leader kind of has to step up, and I don't think somebody like Gina Raimondo is going to be happy with the perception that Nicholas Mattiello is the most powerful man in the State House.
Right.
And I think that she will probably be more than likely at odds with Mr. Mattiello on quite a few things. But at the same time, I think that the GOP pickup in the House is not necessarily a bad thing for Mattiello, because most folks who are consider themselves progressive Democrats would argue that Mattiello is actually more in line with the GOP talking points, especially when it comes to economic development, tax structures. He's certainly more in line, I think, with those GOP members on those issues. I mean, when you can come to the Chamber of Commerce in Northern Rhode Island and use talking points directly out of the GOP's Getting to 25 paper, it just shows you right there that he's more lined up with them on those issues than he is with his other members of the Democratic Party.
Having a Democratic House and a Democratic governor, is this one of those cases of don't wish for something, you might get it?
I don't think, again, I think that people paint the Democrats in this state with too broad of a brush. There's a lot of different. I mean, you'll never find more pro-life Democrats in a state than you will in Rhode Island, which seems almost anathema to the Democratic Party on a national basis. You find. I guess, for lack of a better term, the moderate Democrats, which are more of your like pro-life, kind of center on economic issues, center on taxation issues, than the progressives, which are a much smaller caucus, which focus a little bit more on social justice issues and certainly lean towards different tax structures when it comes to who's paying what in taxes as far as their brackets go. And certainly have different ideas about economic development, certainly with an eye towards some type of sustainability and new development and reusing our existing infrastructure for what it can be used for. So I think it'll be an interesting dynamic. I think that there's going to be quite a bit of tension between the governor's office and certainly the speaker's office. But let's hope for the good of all that they can kind of get over their egos. Yeah, right. and get down to doing some business.
But traditionally, the Democratic House has always had a Republican governor to blame. The bogeyman was always fill in the blanks: Dupree, Carcieri, Lincoln Almond.
I don't think that issue. I don't think that argument holds water at all, because if you look at how our state government is structured, the legislature is where everything happens.
Right, and you and I agree on that. But there's spin and there's hype, and the hype and spin that was projected out to Joe Six-Pack Rhode Island voter was it's this Republican governor that's done you dirty all these years, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary that it was an incompetent General Assembly that got us to the point we're at, the special point we're at today.
Well, incompetent and corrupt.
Right.
This is. So this is a nice little segue into something I've been thinking about this week. Is I think Rhode Island needs what I'm going to call Z-axis politics. Mm-hmm. Okay, so everybody thinks of the right-left paradigm as a line with a chink in the center that says, okay, this is where moderate is, this is where the center is. I prefer to think of it as a 90-degree graph with conservative going up and liberal going across, and everybody falls into some point in that spectrum. But I think what Rhode Island needs to move forward is to find the Z-axis, like take it into the third dimension and bring that Z-axis out, because those are the issues that left and right can agree on. I mean, there's not a politician in this state that didn't throw ethics and accountability into their platform at some point, because it's such a huge issue. Now, whether they actually believe that they need to do it or not, or they're just throwing out red meat, that's another question. But that to me is a Z-axis issue of this is something we can all get behind. So let's all get behind it and move on it. But again, generating political will in a house where it's ruled with an iron fist, and again, if you dare to cross, the king, then he'll cross you off the list.
Well, there's a new verb in the state. It's seminied.
So, I like that. I got seminied.
You got seminied. But you've got a speaker who is extremely adept, possibly the most adept in recent in history, at proposing and allegedly promoting ethics and good government, while at the same time being uncanny in his ability to avoid it. That's the appalling part of this. I mean, we all go back to 38 Special. Karen Macbeth was going to get subpoena power. Karen Macbeth was set up by the speaker, and boy, was she set up by the speaker.
Right.
I mean, she was set up to be the fall guy, and she fell right in line with it.
Right.
Rumor had it, on one hand, she's played quite the outraged legislature, while rumor and speculation, and that's what we dwell on here, by the way, on the coalition. Rumor and speculation would have it that, Mattiello himself put out, a threat to anybody who would try to primary her, that he would crush any attempt to defeat her. So on one hand, you had someone crying foul, while at the same time being potentially propped up by the same leader who did her in. Could that happen in a state like Rhode Island?
Oh, well, I shudder to think that something like that can happen in a state like Rhode Island. I think it can, it does, and I think it's just, I mean, he basically said, yeah, I got somebody to primary Maria Samini, and didn't have any bones about it, and said basically, listen, you can elect people that can get on board and work with me, or you can elect people that are going to be on the outside looking in. And I think that is anathema to the Democratic Party as a whole.
Well, again, go back to McNamara. He's a figurehead.
Mm-hmm.
The last real powerful Democratic leader goes back to what? The Lynch brothers back.
As far as heads of the party,
yeah. Had any clout
that had
whatsoever.
any kind of pull, probably, yeah.
Right. Ever since then, it's really been figureheads propped up by a Democratic apparatus,
right,
to do the will of the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, for the most part. Yep. It's a giant mechanism set up to protect and promulgate the speaker and his interests.
Wow. What do we do about that?
Well, I did my part. I voted for Bobby Lee.
Wait. We voted for the same guy?
We did. I bet you we voted for a lot of the same guys.
Yeah.
Because
by the time you're, and I hope it never ends, but as we move along, there will be a moment when we're going to have an intervention on the show, and you're going to admit to being a libertarian at heart.
Well, we always we agree on more things than we disagree on.
Right.
So, I'm currently bandying about my political affiliation.
There you go. Statewide, how does someone like Magaziner get elected?
Oh, God. I don't know. I think
let's just go down the resume.
Exactly.
Now, Ernie Almonte, who personally I wasn't a fan of, I supported Frank Caprio. I think Frank Caprio would have been the very best person for the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's a highly skilled job. Labor, I guess, threw their mitts in behind Mr. Magaziner.
Mm-hmm.
Gentleman has little or no experience. I think everyone can agree on that.
Well, I don't want to say little or no experience. Let's say little or no relevant experience.
Okay. In a job,
he might have led a very full life. You don't know.
Well, and playing Monopoly in high school and winning doesn't count. Yes, he has some investment banking experience, but as Mr. Riley and a few other people were quick to point out, in terms of actual money management experience, one thing Gina Raimondi, as treasurer par excellence, taught us, both in victory and defeat, as our pension plans was in one hand reformed and on the other hand took a beating under her administration, that the job of general treasurer is no longer for the faint of heart, that it's actually a highly skilled technical position. So how Mr. Almonte, who spent a lifetime in public service, a highly compensated public service, but at the appointment of Democratic officials, how does he lose? How does a state elect someone like Magaziner?
I think that comes down to retail politics. The state and national Democrats came out for Magaziner. Help with boots on the ground, with phone calls, with polls, you name it. Almonte running as an independent, as widely known as his name may be, as well respected as he may be, running as an independent starts you off 20 points down.
Mm-hmm.
It just does. And in order to maintain that 20 points down, you have to work your butt off. And if you're going to make any gains on that, you got to have a team of people behind you that's willing to work their butts off. And these independent campaigns are not in a position to hire staffers, to hire volunteers, but to hire, anybody that's going to go out. And you see these kids with Gina Raimondo T-shirts and Cicilline T-shirts, they're out knocking on doors. They're not, folks, let's be honest, they're not like passionate Cicilline supporters or passionate Raimondo supporters. They're making scratch. They're getting paid to go out there and knock on doors.
Right, they're getting a couple credits at George Washington or NYU. Or
I met kids, I'd see them a couple years back wearing, Michael Riley for Congress. And it's, you're supporting Michael Riley. They're like, nah, he's just paying me like $12 an hour to go knock on doors.
So it comes back to, and the mantra of the show today has been, structure, machine, politics.
Yeah, it's that retail politics. Where are the parties putting their money? Where should they be putting their money? One of the biggest missed opportunities I think we made this year was not utilizing advertising on, which is really, really cheap and really, really targeted advertising on things like Pandora Radio, which a lot of people use, advertising on people's like Yahoo homepages, Google homepages. Everybody fires up their computer and bang, it's their homepage, it's their news feeds, it's all this stuff. They're spending a good amount of time clicking around that page. That was an opportunity we certainly missed this year.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're in the Morrisseau campaign, the use of social media, and in the overall look and feel of the campaign seemed remarkably sophisticated for a local campaign.
Well, we had people who, and let me say this: I don't just go out and work for political campaigns because that's what I do. I don't work for a campaign unless I actually believe in the candidate. If I believe the candidate has some type of integrity, some type of honesty, some type of shielded spine so that when they get up to Smith Hill, they don't suffer from what I call spinal degradation syndrome, which is, it oddly affects only politicians for the most part. It's really
all in exchange for a parking spot
and a license plate.
The
with a low number.
and you're first in line.